Hi, this is Abhishek Bal, and I welcome all of you to my channel. Today, we're going to discuss a intricate concept encapsulating three important topic areas. And I pick up this example from LOS 54.8F, impact of maturity on the price of the bond and the returns generated by the bond. Now, this particular piece of learning, I believe that the language could have been better. However, I will try my level best in my capacity to make it as lucid as possible. So the three related concepts that we can study are basically the FRA, the guaranteed rate, and the forward rate differential, how one can actually benefit out of it. Secondly, we're going to understand the opportunity that may emanate because of the difference of the spot rate and that of the forward rate. And this benefit can be exploited through the cash and carry and the reverse cash and carry arbitrage. And the third important aspect is to understand the impact of bond value change because of the coupon change once the FRA rates are violated. Okay, so before that, what we do is that we simply first take out what the details that have been given. So without much ado, I plot the graph that has been given. So as we can understand that we have a 2 years and 3 years maturity. So typically, since the 3 years rate, spot rate is more than 2 year, we can safely say that the interest rate curve is upward sloping. That is to say that the 2 year spot rate is more, 2 years spot rate is 3 year spot rate is more than the 2 year spot rate. Okay, so this is t is equal to 0. We are standing t is equal to 0. T is equal to 1 rate, of course, is not given. T is equal to 2, and the t is equal to 3 rates are being given. So this is 3.5%. This is 3%. Now, given these two rates, we can always find out. What is the forward rate that actually exists between year 2 and year 3 through a method called as the bootstrapping method. So how do we find out that rate? Well, that is very easy. All that we do is that we make use of the R2 T2 minus R1 T1 formula divided by T2 minus T1. This is the forward rate between year 2 and year 3. So we input the details that has been given here, that is 3.5% into 3 minus 3 into 2 divided by 3 minus 2. So if we do this math, this comes out to be 4.5%. So all that it means is that the forward rate between year 2 and year 3 is 4.5%. But this is exactly where most of the people, most of the student candidates will and do actually make the mistake. This forward rate has been gleaned out at time t is equal to 0. So this 4.5% is exactly not the forward rate that has been found at the end of year 2. This has been found at year t is equal to 0 because we are given two spot rates. We just bootstrapped it and found out this forward rate between year 2 and year 3. This forward rate is also called as the no arbitrage forward rate. No arbitrage forward rate. Okay, so if we have understood this, then there is only one thing more remains, and that is that once we come at the end of year 2, the actual spot rate between year 2 and year 3, that is spot rate for 1 year at the end of year 2, may be or may not be equal to 4.5%. Okay, and exactly the violation of the same will give us the profit or loss opportunity. So let's just first boil down to the first problem, and that is the FRA rate. So in case of an FRA, I'm sure that you would be knowing that if I say that an FRA is 3 into 2, all that it means is that the FRA is going to culminate in 2 periods. Let's say 2 periods could be 2 months, 2 period could be 2 year. I do not know, but the underlying is going to pay for another 1 year or 1 month, whatever be that period. Okay, and basis that underlying could be an interest rate. That underlying could be the stock index benchmarked, or the return of any particular stock or any other particular asset class. So based on that, whatever be the differential, one party will pay to the another party. So there are two rates which have been used here. One is obviously the forward rate, which we can find out. Obviously, in this case, as the name suggests, the forward rate of this FRA happens to be 4.5%. Now, they have used one more nomenclature here, which is basically they said that the guaranteed rate. Now, this guaranteed rate is nothing but basically the spot rate between year 2 and year 3. Okay. Now, three things can happen. First, the spot rate between year 2 and year 3 is actually 4.5%. Again, do understand that we do not have the luxury to know this spot rate at time t is equal to 0. At time t is equal to 0, the only reality that is with us are the two spot rates of year 2, 2-year spot rate and 3-year spot rate. We have nothing else with us that we can call for real. Now, at the end of year 2, three things can happen. First is that the spot rate actually is 4.5%, or the spot rate is more than 4.5%, or the spot rate is less than 4.5%. Typically, the first principle or the first arrangement will not lead to any arbitrage profit, but the possibility for the alternate 2 and alternate 3 will definitely bring in some arbitrage profit potential. So we will study that a little bit more. So as has been mentioned, that in case suppose the guaranteed rate or the spot rate at the end of year 2 is, let's say, more than 4.5%. So in this case, the one who is an FRA receiver, that is the one who is going to receive this guaranteed rate, will stand to benefit, because in such a situation, he or she will be paying at the rate of 4.5%, and yet he or she will be receiving a rate that is more than 4.5%. For instance, let's say this actual spot rate after the culmination of year 2 comes out to be 5.5% for one period. So at 5.5% would mean that the ones who is paying at 4.5% is now stands to benefit, because he or she is going to receive an additional 1%. So the net is that he is going to receive 1%. Similarly, if the guaranteed rate or the spot rate between year 2 and year 3 is less than 4.5%, then the one who has contracted to receive at 4.5% benefits. Why? Because here the guaranteed rate, let's say it is 3.5%. So he or she will be receiving at the rate of 4.5%, and yet will be paying at the rate of 3.5%, net a 1% benefit out of this whole thing. So this is exactly how an FRA works. So this actually addresses the first part of the problem. Now let's see the second part of the problem, and I see most of the people being confused here. So for brevity's sake, I'll redraw the whole thing for you to understand it better. So let's say we are going back to our typical example. So again, the 2-year spot rate is 3%, and the 3-year spot rate is 3.5%. The no arbitrage forward price we found out was to be 4.5%. Now let's imagine that the actual spot rate is less than 4.5%. Let's say it is at something close to, let's say, only 3.8%. So in this case, an investor, what he or she could do is that he can borrow at the rate at time t is equal to 0. He can borrow at the rate of 3% for 2 years and invest in a security for 3 years. Now, you might ask that how does it happen? How does the math work out? Well, you can anyway understand that at the end of the 2 years, he will have to pay at 1.03% for 2 years, and he still will be benefiting at 1.035, which is basically the yield at 3.5% at the end of 2 years. So here, obviously, since the yield is more than the cost of funding that investment, hence the ones who will be investing at 3% at 3-year spot rate will be the winner. Okay, now you might ask, what happens at the end of the 2 year? Well, at the end of the second year, he will be repaying the whole principal along with the interest, and he's going to fund this additional investment. By borrowing at the spot rate between year 2 and year 3, which we had assumed at 3.8%, because given at 3.8%, it still is going to benefit out of the whole exercise because of the compounding effect. Okay, so this is one way wherein the expected, because it's the equivalent forward rate should have been 4.5%, but instead of 4.5%, it's only 3.8%. So he can borrow at 3.8%, and yet because of the compounding effect, he is going to win for the third period as well. Reverse is the case if the rate is more than 4.5%. In case of 4.5%, what he could do is that he could borrow at 2 years, he could borrow for 3 years, he could borrow at 3 years and invest for 2 years. Well, how does the math work out in this case? Well, the math works out in this case like, he can borrow at the rate of 3%, at the rate of 3% for 3 years. He's going to, in 3.5%, sorry. So 3.5% for 3 years, he can borrow, and he's going to invest in for 2 years, and he's going to only earn 3%. But in the third year, since now the rate is going to be more than 4.5%, let's say as it's 5%, so he is going to benefit out of this whole exercise because he has got one additional year wherein he can invest at the additional rate, which is more than the no arbitrage rate. So this is exactly how the cash and carry and the reverse cash and carry happens. Now, coming to the third thing, and which is perhaps the most confusing of the whole thing, I have to first substitute the nomenclature which has been mentioned in your book as the bond coupon rate. So just imagine the coupon rate being substituted as the spot rate. Which is the spot rate? Well, the same spot rate which is between year 2 and year 3. Well, some of you might think that why I've said this to be spot rate. Well, because please understand, even the treasury spot rate are nothing but the yield on the treasury security. So when we say a 1-year spot rate, typically what we are talking about is investing in a zero coupon bond for which is a treasury bond for 1 year. That is how the spot rate of 1 year is being deduced. Similarly, if we talk about the spot rate of 2 year, all that we are essentially talking about is a zero coupon bond for 2 year. This is exactly how the rates are being gleaned out from the prevailing market interest rates, from the prevailing prices of the treasury security. Now, in case of the language that have they used in this book, I want you to substitute this, and once you substitute this, all that it says is that if the coupon is more than the forward rate, well, I substitute this with if the spot rate is more than the forward rate, obviously the bond value increases. The bond value increases. The reverse is the case. If the coupon is less than the forward rate, then the bond, that means the spot rate is less than the forward rate, the bond value increases. Sorry, the bond value decreases. Bond value decreases. Okay. Now, again, on what basis? Well, this concept is on a relative basis. What is meant by the relative basis? Well, we have to understand this. We have to go back to the first slide itself. Now, imagine we are talking about somebody investing for 3 years, somebody investing for 2 years. Now, what happens at the end of the 2 years? As I said before, that there is going to be definitely some sort of alteration, some sort of variation between what the forward rate that has been gleaned out vis-a-vis the spot rate that we actually get. Well, one can issue a government, a treasury security can still be issued for 1 year at the end of 2 years for 1 more year, right? So this is exactly what is meant by spot rate that I have already explained in my third slide of this whole problem. So this is the whole concept of it. Don't get muddled, don't get confused. Try and understand the whole basics of it, and I'm sure that you will get it. Thank you for listening patiently. And if you have any question, please do not hesitate to ask me. I'm there to help you out.